I don't want to say, is it common for this topic that we're about to talk about to kind of feel like my relationship might not be in season anymore, and in fact, it might not be in season again.
I like that you interpret it or, pose it as like a seasonal thing, right? Because it's not only like a seasonal thing because we're human beings and we go through so many things like throughout life, so many transitions, so many adjustments and things like that. But because we're human and because we're all flawed humans, not only are some of those things seasonal, but sometimes it just feels like, in a perfect world, you would think that a relationship's 50-50, right? But
Right.
ultimately, sometimes it's 70-30, sometimes it's 60-40. It really depends on what season that individual is going through as well. So there's just so many complexities between being an individual versus being a partner. So sometimes it is very seasonal and sometimes it feels like it isn't always 50-50. But as long as, both people are putting forth the efforts towards, what their role is in the relationship, then things can move forward.
I love it.
Hey y'all, Katie here with MOMnation, and welcome to another episode of Our Love Story. We know being in a relationship is hard, so Dyanna Eisel, certified couples counselor, and I talk through different tips and tricks to help you navigate your relationship and get through everyday life. While you're here on your favorite podcast platform, please subscribe to our channel. Or if you'd like to visit us on YouTube and watch the video, our handle is MOMnation USA. We hope you enjoy the show.
Good morning, MOMnation. We are back with our monthly episode of Q&A with a couples counselor, Our Love Story. Good morning, Dyanna. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
Doing awesome. Always a pleasure to have you here. I love our topics because they're oh so important, and pretty much everybody is dealing with something that we talk about at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
Relationships are a big deal, Dyanna.
They're a very, very big deal. They make up a lot of our life, all of our relationships, right? Romantic or otherwise, like we are very social beings. So relationships weigh very heavily on us, whether it's in a very positive way or otherwise.
Right. And they come and go. I mean, I heard this really cool quote the other day that relationships are like seasons, and sometimes it's in season and sometimes it's not. And, I'd love your opinion on that in terms of what you've seen. I mean, obviously, your job is to try to keep marriages together or in relationships together, if that is a win-win for both parties, right?
Right.
But, in the grand scheme of things, I guess I don't want to say, is it common for this topic that we're about to talk about to kind of feel like my relationship might not be in season anymore, and in fact, it might not be in season again.
I like that you interpret it or, pose it as like a seasonal thing, right? Because it's not only like a seasonal thing because we're human beings and we go through so many things like throughout life, so many transitions, so many adjustments and things like that. But because we're human and because we're all flawed humans, not only are some of those things seasonal, but sometimes it just feels like, in a perfect world, you would think that a relationship's 50-50, right? But ultimately, sometimes it's 70-30, sometimes it's 60-40. It really depends on what season that individual is going through as well. So there's just so many complexities between being an individual versus being a partner. So sometimes it is very seasonal and sometimes it feels like it isn't always 50-50. But as long as, both people are putting forth the efforts towards, what their role is in the relationship, then things can move forward.
I love that you said that about the 50-50 thing, because I think that is a popular, idea that, hey, if I'm in a relationship, they need to give 50%, I need to give 50%, and that equals the 100. But there are times, even, maybe we aren't feeling so well. Maybe we have some health problems. Maybe there's another sort of crisis happening in our lives where we're unable to give 50% to that relationship. And, I think that boils down to, and you're the expert here, so you tell me, but I think that boils down to just straight communicating with your spouse. My husband and I were in the car the other day, and he mentioned a podcast that he was listening to. I wish I remembered the name. I don't. But he said that person was explaining that, one of the things that has really helped this person's relationship stay wonderful for so long is that they communicate, hey, I'm feeling at a 20% today. Or, hey, you know what? I had a really rough day at work. I know that you have needs and whatnot, but I'm unable to give my full 50% today or whatever it is. And it's important. I loved that because I felt like it was really important to communicate that because like you said, we are human and we do have faults and we do have times when we're able to, contribute more and then times when we might be a little bit more needy.
Sure, absolutely. And you know what? Accountability works both ways. So if you feel like you're in a regulated position to say, like, I can only give you 20% today, like that's just where I'm at, like it's also fair for their partner, if they don't speak up, to hold them accountable very considerately and kindly, of course, but like, hey, I'm noticing that, your behavior is different. I've noticed that we haven't, spent as much time as I would like to together. I've noticed that, whatever, just making like curious observations about how they're doing, not judgment, not criticism, but just like, these are things that I've noticed, so like you can still gently hold your partner accountable to changes to see if, that will open up lines of communication. Because frankly, when we're feeling really dysregulated for one reason or another, sometimes it's difficult to pinpoint exactly why, and have a hard time like articulating it. Some things are, our brains are so multifaceted that sometimes we can't just dedicate all of our energy to pinpointing, oh, this is the one thing right now that's really stressing me out or really making me feel some sort of way. So sometimes having that curiosity from your partner not only holds you accountable, but it also shows that they care, right? That they're observing, and they notice that something's going on, and they're coming from a curious perspective, right? Not like a, hey, you're being really cranky sort of situation, right? But like really curious as to like, what's your experience right now? I'm noticing some differences in you, and like, I'm invested in this and I'm invested in you. So I want to find out like how we can open up this line of communication so we can find a solution if there is one.
Yeah, absolutely. It always boils down to that. Communicate. And I feel like as humans, that's one of the biggest hurdles that we have, or that I've noticed throughout my lifetime and in my relationships, not only that I've had, but that others have had as well, is the ability to really just come to the table in a nice way.
Sure.
Like you mentioned, in a gentle way, and just be like, here's where I'm at. Instead of pointing fingers and instead of being accusatory and instead of being critical, because that just doesn't go anywhere.
No, absolutely not.
So let's dive right into it, Dyanna. As you guys know out there, or maybe you're new to the show and you don't, but we will often take an anonymous post. We don't like to put anyone on blast, but something that has been posted in our MOMnation Arizona group, typically that pertains to relationship, marriage, that kind of thing, and we will chat about it. So today we have a post that came out on May 1st, so it's not that old. And this particular member stated, I need to get out of my marriage, but I keep getting mixed feelings and signs from my SO, significant other. I start feeling bad, but I'm not happy anymore. Advice, please. What do you think, Dyanna?
I feel like sometimes it's like, I need more information. I need to know what that means. When I hear I need to get out of my marriage, I ask, what parts feel good and what parts don't feel good? Can we narrow down what it is that doesn't feel healthy? It doesn't feel functional anymore. And then when you're talking about mixed feelings versus mixed signals, well, what mixed feelings are you experiencing? If we can narrow down what those emotions are, and then what exactly are the mixed signals that you're seeing or that you're feeling, that you're experiencing, and what does that mean? So I really feel like getting to the root of what the feeling is, like what is the mixed feeling, because it leaves it wide open, right? Like, is it, I'm feeling betrayal, but then I'm also feeling forgiveness. I'm feeling love, but I'm feeling resentment. Like, all of those things can exist simultaneously at the same time, but sometimes they need to be like sorted out to figure out where the root of it is. So a lot of times if we're someone that experiences anxious attachment, we have this fight or flight sometimes in our relationships. So if something doesn't feel good, if something feels offensive, something doesn't feel right, sometimes we'll have the urge to run. But then when we go to run, we second guess ourselves and have doubt because there's security, there's comfort, there's maybe kids involved, there's all of these things. And so there's constant like push and pull, and then it doesn't really get anywhere. So those mixed feelings are certainly warranted, healthy, all valid to have those mixed feelings, but I'd be very curious as to where those are coming from and really dig deep into where the roots are in that and what those mixed feelings are and what does mixed signals mean. Right. Like, does that mean that you guys clearly are not on the same page if there's mixed signals happening, right? If you're not understanding what they're saying, there's no communication. So where is the communication level? Does he know or she know what your feelings are? Have you been clear about how you're feeling? Or are we being really secretive and avoidant because we don't want to have conflict, which is also very common, to avoid that sort of conflict so that we don't have a fight, right? So those are all things that come to my mind as sort of untangling what does that mean? What emotions are present here that are making you feel this push-pull and this anxiousness about your security in the relationship? Because that's what I see, right? It's like insecurity in their position in their relationship. Mm-hmm. Like when you hear people say like, are you okay? Are we okay? Is everything okay? Like that's very much like an anxious attachment standpoint. And now I don't know this individual enough to make that call, right? But when I hear those sorts of statements where there's a lot of confusion about the state of the relationship, that's where it brings me to, where there isn't a lot of security in their position in the relationship and the health of the relationship overall.
Yeah, I agree with so much of that. I just want to kind of pick apart a little bit and talk a little bit deeper about. And one big thing that you mentioned and that I think kind of it's got to play a huge part in things. I know just in my life, I mean, you know that I was divorced before and, Matt's my second husband. And so I know that this played a part for me. But it is a really giant big deal on a not only an emotional level, but for a physical level, a financial level. That security, that routine is definitely getting disrupted. It's what a big change to not only leave a relationship, but also to leave your home, find another home, start a whole new life over. I mean, that's really big and really scary stuff. And do you feel like that the fear of moving into that may kind of cloud the judgment of one or more parties to the relationship as to whether or not it's over?
100%. I mean, fear is such a powerful motivator. And there's a lot of fear to everything that you just said, getting up and starting over, ending a relationship. What does that mean if there's kids involved and, we're having to share custody and, all of those things. And, with, the current way that, the economy is right now, there's a lot of people that are struggling. And so some people are staying together for necessity, right? And that's like a whole other topic of, how healthy that is for each other, for themselves, for the kids, like all of those things. But the fear of the unknown is a very powerful motivator to make people stay in relationships that aren't healthy. But my question goes back to, is that black or white? Is it stay or go? Or is there something in the middle? Is there some sort of gray in the middle where our expectations live, where our roles and responsibilities live, where our communication lives, like all of those things, getting to the root and diagnosing the symptoms of the relationship that don't feel healthy? Why is it stay or go? Like, is there a curiosity there? Now you have to have two willing parties to do that, right? Like you have to have both people bought in to the idea of helping the relationship or learning about themselves, learning about how to improve the relationship. You only have one willing participant, right? They've sort of already made that decision for you, which is, it's common, but an unfortunate circumstance where one person doesn't want to work on it, you can't really do anything about that. And that is very frustrating. But if you have two willing participants that are like, hey, we know things don't feel right now, and we deserve to be in a healthy, happy relationship and feel differently than we do right now, then let's put some effort into it. Let's go see a counselor, let's go see a therapist and see if there's someone that can help us untangle this from an objective perspective, right? Because whatever we're doing right now is not working. The way that we have conflict right now is not working. The way that we are communicating is not working. So we need a third party to figure out where the error is happening. Is it in the message that's heard versus delivered, right? Like we covered that, I think, in the previous podcast, right? Like, is there an error in the communication? Is there a misinterpretation of what's being said? Is there avoidance happening, stonewalling, criticism, contempt, all of those things that get in the way of healthy conflict resolution and communication? Sometimes you need a third party to point out, like, okay, this is what I heard. What did you hear when they said that? Because that's interesting how different they are, right? And trying to untangle the preconceived notions of, oh, I already know what they're going to say. I already know what they mean by that, right? There's already this assumption happening after a period of time of dysfunctional communication and conflict resolution that we make a lot of assumptions. And so back to that curiosity piece, are we invested in that? Because if we are invested in the possibility of separating, getting a new place, having to split our kids, having to get a new vehicle, or whatever the case may be, if we're invested in possibly doing that, can we be as equally invested in trying to figure out what's going on and fix it?
Yeah, exactly. And the other part that I wanted to sort of pull out and detail a bit is the mixed feelings and signals. Well, I guess mostly the mixed signals. So you had said, well, what does that mean? What is that? And I feel like that is a really important point to stop on, because what exactly is the signal? Is the spouse just being nice? And does that mean that they want to remain or work on the relationship, or are they just being nice because they don't want it to, they want it to go as smoothly as possible, or they want, what I'm like, does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Is the absence of conflict mean that everything's okay? Right?
Yeah.
So is the absence of conflict mean that everything's good, but sometimes the absence of conflict means we're not communicating, that we're just avoiding a conflict altogether, right? Which is also something we do sometimes. We want to avoid conflict because we don't want the fight. But something that's really important to keep in mind when it comes to conflict is it's not inherently a bad thing to have conflict. In fact, this is going to sound super crazy, but the more conflicts you have that come out to a really healthy resolution, that actually builds your intimacy and builds your trust, because you have an opportunity to teach your partner something every single time you have conflict. You learn that I can create an emotionally safe space for you to feel your feelings and to tell me how you feel, right? Or I could teach you that I can't do that. I can teach you that all of your feelings are fine, and that as unpleasant and negative as those feelings might be, we can find a solution, and it's all welcome with me. And I will sit here in it with you and we can talk about it. You have an opportunity to teach your partner every single time you have a conflict. But if you avoid that conflict, all of those lessons and those opportunities are missed. And that's a real bummer when we avoid conflict, because we have this negative connotation attached to having conflict when it's not necessarily a bad thing. If you have a disagreement about something and you resolve it and you come out the other side feeling really good, you just made like a little deposit into the emotional intimacy bank, right? Like, cool. So we used our skills and we did it this time. That means we can do it again. And that means when we have a big conflict, we can apply those skills to that too, and we'll be successful, or our chances of being successful are much higher.
Yeah.
So what does that mixed signal mean? To your point, like, does it mean we're avoiding conflict? So the absence of conflict means everything okay. I also have to wonder if the mixed signals has anything to do with physical intimacy, right? So sometimes in relationships, if there's the presence of, sexual intimacy, that can definitely give the signal that I am wanted, I am worthy, you want me, you value me, all of those things. But then outside of the bedroom setting, things go back to being very dysfunctional and very unhealthy. So that is a very common theme in hearing about mixed signals in relationships, is sometimes it does come down to sexual intimacy.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I totally get that. Are there any particular, and this may be a different answer for every person, and I get that, but maybe you have some examples. Are there any specific signs that somebody can look at, or know that it's over, or it gives kind of I guess, helps them to make that decision?
The one thing that comes to mind for me is just willingness. If your partner is open to the possibility of being vulnerable and willing to learn and willing to improve and do something better, I think that's a sign that this could really work. If you're both committed, even if on a 1 to 10 scale, you're both committed at like a 3, but you both continue to show up and you do the work, that's a sign that it could certainly work. I would say a sign that it's not going to is their lack of willingness. If they're not curious as to what could change or what their role is in it or to hold themselves accountable or any of those things, you can't work with that, right? Like they've made the decision for you. They've decided that they're not willing to do any of those things. And you can't have a relationship with only one willing participant. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, is there a sign? If you sit your partner down, this poster sits their partner down and says like, listen, this is how I'm feeling. I feel like there's, issues in our relationship related to this, this, and this. I'm not feeling secure in the relationship. Like, I feel like this is something we need to work on. Tell me what your thoughts are. And if that partner is saying, hey, yeah, maybe I've noticed a lot of the same things. I really don't know how to bring it up. I've really just been trying to avoid a fight. But yeah, like, let's try to figure this out. What do we do? How do we go about doing that? Right? And that's like a pretty good indicator for the poster that their partner is willing to try. And maybe they don't see some of the things that they do, some of their behaviors that are contributing to this cycle, right? But if she sits them down and they say, well, I don't know what to tell you, it's all in your head. This sounds like a you problem. Anything that's like minimizing, dismissive, gaslighting, perhaps, like any of those things, to me, that would be a pretty clear sign that unless a person is going to change overnight, which we know doesn't really happen, that's probably a good indicator for the poster to figure out what they want their next steps to be.
How about, is there, and again, it could be a different answer for each person, but is there a certain amount of time that you would suggest a couple give before they make the decision to split?
I think that's really like a lot of things. I feel like I say this a lot, very subjective, right? Right. There's some couples that wait until they're like make or break, right? Like they wait till they get to that point where they're like, well, if this doesn't work, then we're done, right? And so in order to get some sort of commitment, I'll ask, like, is there a time frame that you're looking at here? Is it by, is it 6 months? Is it how long are you, wanting to invest in this? And what does improvement look like to you, right? Because if you're looking for just like a complete 180 in like 3 weeks, like that's not going to happen, right? It took however many years to get into this situation. Like it doesn't necessarily take that same amount of time to get out of it, but it is going to be, an investment in time to do that. So some couples really operate well with like a targeted goal. Like we're giving this until December to see some sort of improvement. This is what improvement would look like. This is what I'm looking for, sort of thing. And if we can move that needle from a 3 to a 7, solid, then we keep going, but some couples that, take a step back and they aren't in that crisis mode of like stay or go sort of situation. I don't feel like they necessarily want or need a time frame. It's just we're making this investment now so that we don't get to that point later. We're being proactive versus reactive, and we're trying to get to the root of things that could possibly be happening later or things that are coming up now that we could see being a bigger problem later, right? And in that case, it's just they're on their own time. There really isn't a set amount of time for you to be like in couples counseling. Some clients I've had for 4 years. Some clients I've had for 6 months. It just really depends on, what the issues are, right? Their level of commitment to doing the work and their level of investment in doing the work, and just where they're at in terms of how long this has been going on, their feelings about it, the issues at hand. It's really, really subjective, but I don't think there's a right or wrong way to go about saying, this is my expectation at 6 months. This is what I need to be seeing in order to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, that was very thorough, Dyanna. Thank you.
I try, Katie. I try.
Oh, you're awesome. You're awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to add for this mom, for that particular post, or to this topic?
I would say if that mom can sit their partner down and have that conversation, like I was referring to a few minutes ago, and either way, if she feels supported or not, individual counseling is amazing.
Yeah.
And being able to get to the root of why you feel the way that you do. And so whether or not your partner at this time has that buy-in, you will learn a lot about yourself and where you're coming from, where you've come from, right? And some of your own influences and predispositions and all of those things that make you who you are, right? That form your personality. And you might learn that, hey, maybe I'm outgrowing this, or hey, maybe this is what I'm contributing to the conflict. This is what I'm contributing to, the unhealthiness of the relationship, right? And so you learn a lot about yourself going that route. And so I feel like either way, that might be a really good route for this particular poster to take, so that she can help untangle the mixed feelings and untangle those mixed emotions and things like that, so that maybe she can articulate it more clearly to her partner if she can't clearly identify right now where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. Well, thank you again, Dyanna. And I know that your door is always open to our followers, our fans, members of MOMnation. How can they get in touch with you? And you do offer a free consultation, yes?
I do. You can go to my website. It's DyannaIselTherapy.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you can click on schedule a free consultation. You get a free 15-minute consultation with me. I will answer all of your questions, all of the good stuff. And then you can also you can reach me on Facebook or Instagram at Dyanna Isel Therapy as well.
I suppose it's research too. I mean,
it is research, right? I fully support you researching every individual and couples counselor that you run across. Look at what they specialize in, and see how it fits. Trust and rapport is the most important thing that you can have with whatever provider you go with. And so I think it's really important that you find the right fit. So yes, research as well. But
research away. And you can research Dyanna more over on our YouTube channel, because we have been at this for quite some time now, Dyanna, and it's been absolutely amazing. We are on our second year of this podcast, and sharing with our members, followers, fans, all of that jazz, everything relationship. And I think all the things, because there's lots of things. We know that. I mean, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's just really our entire life is one big relationship, right? And
absolutely.
So it's definitely an important topic. And I thank you very much again for being with us. For those of you, again, who want to research more of Dyanna, hop on over to our YouTube channel, and it is at MOMnation USA. That is our handle. Just scroll down a little bit. You will see Dyanna's lovely face, and you will see our podcast, our playlist for the podcast. And it's called Q&A with a Couples Counselor, Our Love Story. If you are listening to us on you're more of a podcast fan, then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for MOMnation Talk Radio, and there you can click on the little bell or whatever it is that allows you to subscribe to the channel, so that way you can get notifications every time we have a new show. All righty, Dyanna. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye.